Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Monday, so it is Mark Silvestri Day. We're looking at the next issue of his CYBERFORCE miniseries from the early 90s, his start at Image Comics. This is CYBERFORCE issue 3, cover dated May 1993, and we've got a great cover here with our guest star PITT by Silvestri, inked by Williams. Pretty authentic, I think, to the Silvestri style overall around this period. Close enough to what we saw before this on Wolverine, even though there was a different inker there. Cool kind of Joe Chiodo colors. You'll notice, I don't know if he colored this cover, but just a lot of blues and oranges in CYBERFORCE in this first miniseries. So you're seeing a lot of that on the cover here. And this has just appeared where PITT, for some reason, I mentioned it before somewhere in one of the videos, but I'll mention it again. He was just so popular that he was appearing in everyone else's title to the detriment of his own title, in the sense that, his own comic wasn't appearing much. Everyone kind of incorporating the Dale Keown vein structures, sometimes incorporating stuff that you like from other artists into your own art. So definitely started with PITT here, and I guess because he's drawn that character, he's using that kind of stylistic vein depiction, if I can use a bunch of hoity-toity words to describe how someone draws veins. And of course we've got the CYBERFORCE character here, Attack and PITT, and so we're pretty much know what's in store here. The typical crossover where, probably at first they're at odds, but they learn to work together against a greater evil. That's probably what's going to happen. That's it for the cover. Let's have a look inside. Still appreciate these Image comics because they're on that really cool newsprint paper. Somewhat, the thick newsprint paper. I think this is even slightly thicker or better quality than what Marvel's using with those Incredible Hulks and X-Force and Wolverines that I've talked about in past reviews, right? When Image went too glossy, I didn't like it quite so much. There's something here, like this paper is thick, so it's really absorbing the black, maybe a bit too much here. Maybe that has something to do with computer coloring as well, where it comes out a little bit brighter. Possibly. I'm just throwing out ideas here. But I do like the finish here pretty much overall that we're getting. So pencils, Mark Silvestri, writer Eric Silvestri. Got to say the story is just crap. Eric Silvestri, whatever you're doing here, you're probably highly overpaid for whatever your contribution is. And here, I got to say, inks in this issue, Silvestri's getting a bit of help. We're looking at Dan Panosian, which we've talked about in a prior review this week, with the Rob Liefeld X-Force review of the issue this week, where he's inking Rob Liefeld. So in around the same time, close to, he's also inking Mark Silvestri here. I do think that Panosian's inks are more suited to Silvestri, but there are some differences that are similar to the differences between Liefeld and Panosian that I talked about in that review, which I'll kind of go over today again. But Mark Silvestri does ink some pages here, so maybe we can kind of figure out who did what. And there's Trevor Scott as well, who I talked about, inked Rob Liefeld on X-Force 11's cover. And now he's helping out over here. And eventually, I think he becomes J. Scott Campbell's inker, or at least at first. Anyways, he does end up working, I think, for Wildstorm as well, not just for Mark Silvestri. Letters, Mike Heisler, and colors, Joe Chiodo. So look out for the blue and orange. Already on this page, there's a bit. But Silvestri, I want you to see the art. So still dynamic and not stilted like it's going to become when he takes more of that Jim Lee influence, and later on when he does like stuff like Witchblade. Well, Mike Turner did most of Witchblade, but when he does what is that guy called? The Darkness. When he does The Darkness, his style becomes posy and stilted, and none of that is present here. He's still got that Wolverine energy and the dynamics and the angles. Good example here with Blitzkrieg popping out through here, the top of the truck. Why do I know that character's name? I just always like the design. I said it last review that I think he kind of looks like a He-Man character, so I've always been into He-Man characters. I think Mark Silvestri probably inked this. I'm looking at like the lady face and some of the hatching and stuff that I think is reminiscent of Wolverine here on the guy's muscles and neck. And then the line is also finer. Just like Rob Liefeld's inking line is a bit finer on his own pencils, Mark Silvestri's is as well. And then we move to Dan Panosian, who I guarantee you is who inked this page here. I can tell the telltale signs here. He tends to use a square kind of shapes and angular kind of look to his inking, and thicker, bolder lines as well. So you're getting that here. And I say that because you can really tell here with this page. It's the one that's obviously the biggest, up close, bigger lines, bigger detail. even though these characters look like Silvestri compositions and stuff, when you look at these characters here in the foreground, they're almost, the same kind of look and aesthetic that you're going to see when Dan Panosian pencils and inks Prophet a little bit later. The style of hatching and the underlighting here, very indicative of that. So definitely I would say this splash page, double splash rather, inked by Dan Panosian for sure. Throughout the whole comic, I'm not going to cover each page, but definitely want to point this one out. As much as and as awesome as I think Marc Silvestri is, kind of a wasted double page spread here, right? It's not like anything super interesting is happening here. It's pretty cool, but it's, it's kind of again, maybe leaning towards that Jim Lee stuff already. That Jim Lee posy stuff, as I call it. Still pretty solid on the storytelling. Lots of panels per page, right? We haven't gone full image yet. But it is, once again, an issue of just characters fighting each other. Not that much to say about it other than, story-wise, whatever, but the pretty art more than makes up for it, at least when you're a 13-year-old kid, or 12-year-old kid when this came out, or you're a 44, about to be 44-year-old man like me. Always some cool shots, though. The fact that he turns, the camera a bit and the angles. And I mentioned before how I think he's taking kind of a bit of a slight manga influence on how he's drawing this kid here. Is it manga? Manga? You tell me in the comments. Always love this character's face. I like the design. Marc Silvestri designed some interesting characters, and there's another one in this comic that I want to talk about who no one probably remembers, but I think looks really cool and should have been probably pursued further. But there's something with this character here where I feel it's like a cross between Fire Marshal Bill that Jim Carrey used to do on In Living Color, the pyromaniac fire marshal. If you've never checked it out, just right. Fire Marshal Bill, Jim Carrey, In Living Color, something like that on YouTube. I invite you to go check it out. It's hilarious. And a bit of Freddy Krueger, kind of. And you'll see that maybe in other shots later, but there's something there. Obviously Eddie Krueger, Freddy Krueger was also in his storyline Burnt, so kind of like Fire Marshal Bill. They're similar characters. Now this guy I don't think is meant to have been burnt, but his face is kind of weird looking in that way that people who were burned in the face tend to look. Yeah, so right here, I've talked about her, I don't even remember her name, but I've talked about how I think her design is awesome. Like, again, there's so many great designs in here, just never pursued fully, and I don't feel like he pushed those characters that seemed the most interesting, like this lady here, which is part of the storyline, but, I think she dies at the end of the miniseries. Spoilers! I'm not 100% sure, but when we get there, we'll see. This character here, his name is Warbuck, which I think is hilarious, so maybe not the best name, but I love this guy's design. It's like not too extreme. It's got kind of a Jack Kirby crackly line design to the jacket here, and the fact I've never really seen like a anthropomorphic reindeer man. We get a lot of werewolves and bear men from Russia and all this stuff, but like a reindeer man, again, kind of different, not something you'd expect, right? Like platypus man or something. But I think it works, and I think it's a really cool design, and the character is just not really pursued at all. Her as well, with this kind of stark dark blue coloring. I think she has a very good visual. Some of these characters have, potential, but are just never pursued. CYBERFORCE themselves, honestly, kind of boring, right? A lot of the characters kind of in their periphery, to me, seem more interesting than they are. I like how they incorporate PITT into the storyline. So these guys eventually go back to their lair. And you kind of see, just in silhouette, PITT's arm here over the couch. And they're like, asking about it. Who's he? Name's PITT. Had a rough night. Needed a place to crash. Not the kind of guy you can say no to. So PITT just showed up to a random guy, anvil, short, stocky guy's, industrial lair and said, I'm sleeping on your couch. Kind of tenuous to get him in here. But I mean, early image, they're not, trying to intertwine everything and do some sort of Alan Moore thing. Where everything connects to everything else. So, PITT is in real quick and easy. Here are the X-Men, CyberForce and their Warbird ship. Oh my god, like that's the same ship as the X-Men. It's the same plane. Am I wrong? It's the same plane. Like, come on, Marc Silvestri. I know that's, at that time it's the height of technology and the coolest plane around, but, if the X-Men have it, You should maybe do something different. All right, so Silvestri has adopted the vertical double page splash, the Liefeld. Looks pretty cool though. Does a really good job on PITT, I think. He's got the proportions right. I have nothing bad to say about his depiction. Mark Silvestri's a great artist. I think he does a great job on PITT here. Where PITT kind of fails, I'll talk about in a few of the next shots. Just look down here though. Even though it's a double page splash, he's got the insert panels, right, which I think is great. But this panel here, it's small, but the body language on both characters, you know, this guy, you know, PITT kind of rotating, getting ready to punch him, I guess, and this guy running towards him, I think is just really well done, especially for just a small little kind of medium shot panel down here. Just really good, the body language of these two characters. And the way Impact runs, I think Silvestri does a good job at running characters, you know, as opposed to, say, Rob Liefeld, who's not quite as successful. Yeah, good rendition of PITT. PITT's got all the 90s stuff. He's got the chains. He's got the lumberjack, but the no-sleeve lumberjack, so that's tougher. All right, and everyone's kind of showing up at the party here, and PITT is, you know, taken as a bad guy right away, so Impact punches him, and the battle is on once again. Great art throughout. Here's where, again, when we get PITT in a profile shot, the fact that he has no nose, right? It just does look a little odd. Is it me? Like something's kind of missing. If I hide the head here, the hair at the top of his head, and imagine he's white and he's got like this blue little sailor hat. I mean, that's basically just an angry Stay Puft Marshmallow Man to me, right? That's kind of what he looks like. And we've got another profile here where you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It's like, it's not bad, but there's just something missing, isn't there? It just looks kind of odd, I guess, to me. Always thought this, like, you know, just a quick panel here. The fact that she's popping out of the top, her leg, her foot out of the panel here really works for me. I love when stuff pops out of the panel, creates more depth. And just, like, it's not about the ass. I'm talking about just the pose here and the angle and the foreshortening. It's just so well done. You know, did he look at some gymnast for reference? Maybe, possibly, like on that parallel bar or something. But it's just so well done. It's a hard shot to draw, right? And it's just kind of one-off quick thing he does here at the bottom and does it so well. Silvestri's a great illustrator. Okay, so this is a funny double page splash. I really like it because you get a double page splash kind of cool image here, which I'll talk a bit about more. But you've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels in total on a double page spread, so that's pretty good. And you've still got the story moving ahead, right, and moving along. Some great rendering down here on PITT's face. I think that looks cool. PITT just casually throwing a guy away here is hilarious. And even this shot here of him crouching down to be a little more, not as dominant, I guess, and not as imposing to talk to the human, right? To not intimidate him as much as maybe he, you know, his presence and his size would intimidate a normal human. So yeah, this cool shot in the middle here. First of all, dialogue-wise, Eric Silvestri, shut up. Like, I can't think he was doing this ironically. But even as a kid, I read this and it made me laugh that in the heat of action here, these two characters would be fighting each other, right? Excuse me, not fighting each other, but we'll be having this conversation. They've already fought each other. They would be having this conversation here, you know, and being so verbose and wordy and polite to each other. I thought was hilarious. So while they're, you know, stabbing people and destroying and smashing faces, this is their dialogue. So Ribclaw, I must apologize for my large friend. Impact assumed that you were somehow responsible for the explosion. Stab. I understand. It was an honest mistake. I did not know the nature of this conflict. I do not know the nature of this conflict, but I sense, when characters sense, right? You know, the easiest kind of plot contrivance ever. I sense that you're a good guy, right? So we're going to move on and not have to really explain why. I join in with you really quick. But I sense that you are much like myself, a true warrior, and I'm honored to fight at your side. Smash your head into 1,000 pieces. So these guys are having this polite kind of dialogue, all the while, you know, stabbing and crushing and killing people, which I thought was hilarious. Even as a kid, it's hilarious as I read it back now again today. And I think the irony is lost on Eric Silvestri, who's probably doing most of the dialogue here. I don't think he was doing this on purpose for a laugh. I think he was being very serious, but it certainly makes me laugh very, very much. All right, let's move on. Got the team shot here, looking cool. You know, we got a cloudy orange California background. Velocity having some flashbacks to her sister and her mother when she's a kid. And we get one last little sequence with the characters I'm most interested in and get the least information about. Mother, I forget her name, but let's call her Mother because everyone calls her Mom. She's kind of the mutant leader in this Mark Silvestri version of X-Men called CYBERFORCE. And she protects the mutants, right? Or at least she's meant to be the protector. Warbuck is back. Love him. Told you about that. And so Forearm is basically also a bodyguard for Mother as well as Warbuck, and they're keeping her safe here. This limousine, I mean, come on. How how quickly was that drawn? Does that look like any make or model of a car that you know? Still works for storytelling purposes, obviously, right? We get it, but just so hastily drawn. It just makes me laugh. I mean, I'm not criticizing. The rest of the art is amazing. Just every once in a while when you get a quick panel like that that looks... I mean, it serves its purpose, but man, what a horrible car. Oh no, Warbuck, my favorite, you've been injured. Even the coloring, I think, looks cool. The blue here. Obviously, Joe Scioto, we know, loves the blue. He's gone a little easy on it, I think, this issue. Maybe someone told him to tone it down a little bit. But there you go. Forearm carrying my buddy Warbuck back, injured. And protecting Mother at all costs. We back with Fire Marshal Eddie Kruger, Bill Marshall, whatever. I would venture to say with this page, if you look, it's not so much in the close-ups. I've talked about sometimes with inkers, close-ups are fine. They look like the original artist, but then things that are smaller in the background sometimes can kind of be a tell and show us that, you know, a different inker was doing this page. So some of the rendering here in the hands and the fine line here makes me think that this is the Trevor Scott page, or the page that Trevor Scott inked, because you get a much finer line here and more of a kind of Wildstorm West Coast finish, which Silvestri will slowly go towards while at Image. But this is something Trevor Scott would do at Wildstorm later on. He was inking J. Scott Campbell for a while. If I'm not mistaken, he was inking him on Gen 13 when that first started. So the difference between the three, I would say that, you know, the other inker on this issue, Panosian, tends to have a thicker, bolder line. Trevor Scott tends to have a very fine kind of West Coast line. And Mark Silvestri is somewhere in between there with the thickness of his lines. So here it looks a lot like Silvestri, but here I'm pretty sure. And with these smaller shots of, once again, in the background, when pencilers don't define details quite as much, or there's not as much detail, it's more left to the inker's interpretation a little bit. We get a little bit more of the West Coast, Wildstorm, Trevor Scott kind of look. And of course, left on a cliffhanger here with two of my favorite characters that get almost no showtime in this miniseries. I think they're going to even probably not be past issue 4 in this series. Definitely two characters. I think they were kind of wasted. The visuals are cool. And again, let me finish that thought. The cliffhanger leaving us with the elevator being detached and this gang of people here, these characters, falling at gravity speed towards ground floor. So that's how we're left for issue 3. We got an ad here previewing issue 4 of CyberForce, the miniseries finale, special silver foil embossed cover. It is the 90s. Gimmicks covers are all the rage. If I remember correctly, we'll see it next week for the review, but this whole section here of his cybernetic part is basically the silver embossed part. Not sure why someone jizzed in Forearm's forehead, and the fact that he's got blood coming out of his nose. I hope those two events are not connected in any way. Some really weird stuff coming up in CyberForce number 4. We'll find out for sure next week when I review that one. Before we go, just want to talk about this bit of fan art here by Matt Fitzsimmons. Just want to say congratulations. Good job on this drawing 30-odd years ago. Hope you're still drawing today. Always thought this was really cool, even as a kid. Still think it's really cool today. A very distinctive graphic signature, quite different from what I was used to seeing back in the day with the Image artists. Still works for me today. Yeah, just a good-looking drawing here in a very different and distinctive style, which I think is great. And, of course, quick advertisement for CyberForce issue 0 by Walt Simonson. I do think I'll be reviewing that one chronologically, you know, story-wise. Excuse me, it does happen before, obviously, CyberForce issue 1. But as far as when it was published, it did come out after issue 4 of CyberForce in the miniseries. So that's when I'll be reviewing it. So next week, CyberForce 4, and then we'll hit CyberForce number 0 by Walt Simonson. So there you have it, guys. That's my review of CyberForce issue 3. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you are subscribed and you are still watching, thank you so much for being loyal to the channel. I really appreciate it. If you are not subscribed yet, but you are watching videos, please do so. It takes a quick second for you, and it really helps the channel out. Excuse me. Helps get us out there to other like-minded people who hopefully are into the same kind of stuff you and I are, namely comic books. So everyone out there, hope you enjoyed the video, and I want you all to have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.